Alright guys, back for another quick one. APES Unit 10, Lecture 5, still on the topic of summarizing the importance of and dangers to habitat and species diversity. We're going to focus in on rangeland and wetlands today. Rangeland is referring to grasslands, essentially. Land that is not intensively managed and is often used for grazing livestock. So rangeland ecosystem services, right? Rangelands are our grasslands, and our grasslands are really, really important habitat for a lot of organisms, our native grazing species being one, but lots of ground species as well. They are a really important carbon sink, almost equal to forests in their ability to absorb and hold on to carbon in the soil. And rangelands are super important in maintaining soil quality. They're important for maintaining air quality, partially because of their ability to hold soil in place. So when the wind blows in the grasslands, which it often does, the grasses and their root systems hold the soil in place, whereas otherwise it would blow all kinds of dust up into the air. Right, and again, because of the helping to maintain the soil, they help to prevent runoff and pollution of local waterways. Right, so really, really important ecosystems in a whole lot of facets. Now, rangeland degradation is primarily due to the overgrazing, right, or one of the processes. So much of our rangeland, by the way, has been converted to agricultural land. But yeah, so overgrazing, the process we talked about back in our soil unit. If we put too many animals in a given space and don't move them fast enough, right, they can damage the grasses and therefore lead to that desertification process, right? So soil erosion, land degradation, desertification due to overgrazing or improper techniques being used. All right, so trends in the U.S., right? About 30% of the total land area in the U.S. is rangeland. 2/3 of that is privately owned. The other third is managed by government agencies or part of our public lands, right? There is pressure to subdivide and develop on our rangelands for a variety of reasons. And there's a couple acts in place, the Taylor Grazing Act of 1934 and the Federal Land and Policy and Management Act of 1976 help to regulate where development can occur. And much like our national forests, the Department of Agriculture and stuff in the Bureau of Land Management are in charge of managing our grasslands. And so the big to-do a few years back with the Malheur National Wild Refuge takeover was a lot to do with public rights of grazing on publicly owned land, right? I won't get into that right now. It's kind of a political hot topic, but that's a lot of what that had to do with. So conditions in our public rangelands are slowly improving, right? A lot of the previously damaged areas are becoming better. And that is because of management, and also we're learning more about the art of grazing and how it can help grassland ecosystems, but if overdone or done improperly can hinder them. All right, next topic is going to be wetlands. We did refer to wetlands back in our biomes unit, but wetlands are areas that are basically covered by water for at least part of the year. All right. Now, these are specialized ecosystems, right, where the plants and other organisms have adapted to life in a wet environment or thoroughly saturated soils, right? And the soils that do develop in our wetlands are really oxygen poor, right? And so they require that specialized plants occupy them. Now, the reason wetlands are important is a variety of them, but we're going to talk about freshwater, right? Freshwater wetlands first, I guess. Excuse me. So marshes, bogs, swamps, and stream banks, right? The freshwater wetlands are fed by surface runoff, sometimes underground springs, or by flooding rivers nearby. Now, the plants that live there must survive fluctuating water conditions, as I mentioned in the last slide. All right, we have what are called coastal wetlands. Coastal wetlands include salt marshes, mangrove islands, coastal shorelines, bays, swamps, mudflats, etc. Right? These tend to have what's called brackish water, which is sort of a mix of salt and fresh water. These are especially cool ecosystems because the organisms that live in them often have to be adapted to live in both fresh and salt water. Most organisms are usually adapted to one or the other. The ones that live in our coastal wetlands tend to be adapted to both conditions. All right. So human activity that threatens wetlands, right? So wetlands were often just kind of viewed as a nuisance or wastelands for a long, long time before we really understood the ecosystem services that they do provide, right? So they've been drained for agriculture and mosquito control, dredged out for navigation, and so on. Right, so all kinds of threats to wetlands, but because of that, they've been shrinking by nearly 60,000 acres per year. All right, so there is some laws in place now, and that new law, relatively new, is the no net loss of wetlands, right? Which basically means it doesn't prevent developers from developing on a wetland. It just means that if they do develop on a wetland, they have to contribute an equal area to wetland restoration somewhere else. All right. The trouble with that is not all wetland restorations are successful. I am missing a slide, which is why I got kind of out of whack there, and I apologize, but it's the ecosystem services provided by wetlands. The reason wetlands are so important, one, is they provide flood control along our flood areas and on the coast. So our coastal wetlands especially are really, really good at absorbing the energy of a storm surge, right? Our freshwater wetlands, as riverbanks flood, they again help to absorb. They act like a giant sponge and absorb a lot of that water that occurs during flooding, making flooding less disastrous in the areas where wetlands have been left intact. Right, so they protect areas from flooding. Two, they are really, really important for water quality. Right, the particular microbes that exist in our wetlands are exceptionally good at breaking down toxins, right, even man-made toxins, but also naturally occurring toxins. They're good at preventing sediment runoff into our local rivers and waterways. Right, so and there's all kinds of economic benefits that exist because of wetlands as well. So, anyways, I'm sorry that slide is missing. I must have accidentally deleted it on at some point. But anyways, this is a fast one. I get it, but I wanted to get this out to you guys in as short a way as possible. I will see you later.